Saul and the Israelites continued to go to war to defend themselves against other enemy nations. One day, an enemy called the Philistines provoked the Israelites to war. The Philistines came to Judah and pitched their camp on a hill with the valley down below. The Philistines had a giant and fearsome warrior named Goliath. He was over 9 feet tall and wore scale armor that weighed 125 pounds. He was so strong that his sword weighed 15 pounds. When the Israelites saw that the Philistines had set up camp on the hill in Judah, they assembled their own warriors on the hill opposite the Philistines. Every single day and night, Goliath would come down from the hill in front of the Israelites and take a stand. He would yell insults and taunt all the Israelite warriors. Goliath did this for 40 days and nights, and soon the Israelite warriors were filled with fear and dread of this giant Philistine. No one among the Israelites was brave enough to fight him. During this standoff, Jesse of Bethlehem asked his son, David, to take food and supplies to his 3 older brothers who were warriors for King Saul in the battle against the Philistines. As soon as David entered the camp of the Israelites, he saw his 3 older brothers standing in the battle lines facing the Philistines. David left his things with the baggage keeper and ran to his brothers. Just as he reached them, Goliath stepped out from his battle line and began to taunt and insult all the warriors of Israel. But when the Israelites saw Goliath, instead of charging into battle, they all fled in fear for their lives. When David saw this, he asked the men standing near him, "What will be done for the man who kills this Philistine and removes this disgrace from Israel? Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God?" The men replied, "The king will give great wealth to the man who kills this giant warrior. He will also give his daughter in marriage to him, and his family will not have to pay taxes in Israel." King Saul was told that David was talking to his warriors about the matter, so he sent for him. David said to King Saul, "Let no man's heart have terror or fear on account of this giant. Your servant will go and fight him." But Saul replied, "You are not able to fight against this Philistine. You are young, and he has fought many battles since he was your age." David said, "I have tended my father's sheep as a young boy, and whenever a lion or bear came and took a lamb from the flock, I went after it and attacked it and rescued the lamb. If I can kill a lion and a bear, then I can do the same to this Philistine who has dared to taunt the armies of the living God." Then David said, "The Lord, who has protected me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear, will protect me from the hand of Goliath." Saul answered, "Go, and the Lord be with you." Then Saul placed armor and a bronze helmet on David for protection. David attached his sword over his armor and tested it to see if he could move well. But David was not used to the weight of the armor and took it off. Then he took his staff in his hand and went to the stream and chose 5 smooth stones and put them in the pouch of his shepherd's bag. With his sling and 5 smooth stones, he approached the Philistine giant. Goliath walked toward David, and when he saw him, he sneered at him, saying,
"You're nothing more than a kid. Who do you think I am? A dog that you come at me with sticks? Come here," he said. "I will give your flesh to the birds of the sky and the beasts of the field to feast on."
With great courage, David said, "You come at me with a sword, a spear, and a shield, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will hand you over to me, and I will strike you down and cut off your head. Today I will give the bodies of the Philistine army to be eaten by the birds of the sky and the beasts of the field, and the whole world will know there is a God in Israel. Then all will know that it is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give all of you into our hands." This enraged the Philistine giant, and he came towards David to kill him with his sword. As David ran toward Goliath, he reached into his bag and put 1 smooth stone into his sling and slung it, striking Goliath on his forehead. The stone sank deep into his forehead, and he fell face down on the ground. David ran and stood over Goliath. He took his sword and plunged it into his body, and after he killed Goliath, he cut off his head. When the Philistine army saw this, they turned and ran in fear for their lives from the army of Israel. As soon as David returned from killing Goliath, he was brought before King Saul. That day, Saul kept David with him and did not let him return to his home. As David, Saul, and the army of Israel returned from the battle with the Philistines, women came out from all the towns of Israel, joyfully singing and dancing, saying, "Saul has slain his thousands, and David his tens of thousands." This angered Saul, and from then on, a bitter root of jealousy entered his heart. Because of David's great success and whatever Saul sent him to do, Saul promoted him to a high rank in the army. But for Saul, his bitter heart of jealousy would only continue to grow. This would be the beginning of many difficult and fearful times in the life of the courageous warrior and future king, David.